In my humble opinion, one of the best features of CorelDRAW X4 is its compatibility with other file formats. What I mean by that is if you're collaborating, for example, with others on a project and they're not using CorelDRAW, no problem. If they're using another application like Adobe Illustrator, you can open up those file formats and you can even import those formats into a current project. You can also save to formats and export to those formats. So if you're sharing with others and they don't have Draw, save it to their format or export it to their format so they can open it up in their application. So in this chapter, we're actually going to look at the differences between opening and importing. We'll look at the different formats you can open and import. Then in the next lesson, we'll move to exporting and saving to those other formats. And then finally in this chapter, we'll explore a very, very popular format out there that everyone has access to, and that is PDF, or portable document format. But right now in this lesson, we're going to start with opening and importing. And you can see I've actually already opened up a file that we're going to work with. It's from the Lesson 13 folder of your exercise files if you've got them. And if you want to follow along, open up go5 certificate1.cdr. It's an almost finished version of our $5 gift certificate. All we're missing is the logo. So let's say the scenario is this. Somebody else has been working on our logo for us and we need to bring it into our project. Let's say they were using Adobe Illustrator or some other graphics application. Now we need to think about how we're going to bring it into our project. Well, let's talk about the difference between opening another file and importing. We'll start with open. When I go up to my Open button up here on the standard toolbar, Control-O being the keyboard shortcut, I'm presented with the Open Drawing dialog box. Now we're going to navigate to the Lesson 13 folder because I've got some samples in here for you. First of all, you'll see I've got a logo over here, gologo.ai. That's an Adobe Illustrator file. I can tell by the extension. When I hover over it, it does say the type is AI file. I also see the size and the date it was last modified. I've also got another logo here, which is a TIFF image, a bitmap image. So one is a vector graphic, the other a bitmap image, and I actually can't open a TIFF image in CorelDRAW. I can import it. If I went to my GOLogo TIFF file and click open, watch what happens. You can see that I cannot open it. I try using the import command. Very interesting. So I need that import command when working with bitmaps. So I click OK. On the other hand, because an Adobe Illustrator file is a vector graphic type application, I can open this up just by clicking on it and clicking the open button. But watch what happens here. Actually open up the file. Looks kind of funny. I'm going to zoom in here to see what happened. And it is my logo. I can see it sitting up here near the top of the page, but I really didn't want to do that. I didn't want to open up another file. Now I have to select it and copy it and paste it into my project. So I'm just going to close this up by clicking the close button right here. And instead of opening up the Adobe Illustrator file or the TIFF image, which I can't, I can import. That'll bring it into the project I'm currently working on here, my gift certificate. So I'm going to go back to my pick tool. I'm going to go up to the import button this time. It's this one here. I've got my import and export buttons side by side on the standard toolbar. Control-I is the keyboard shortcut. An easy one to remember. I is an import. So I give that a click. Navigate to my Lesson 13 folder of the exercise files. And now if I wanted to, I can choose from either one of these. So let's go to our Adobe Illustrator file that we just saw. And when I click on that and choose Import, watch what gets imported here. Whatever I click and drag is going to be the size of my logo. Notice that my mouse pointer now has this little corner frame. So if I wanted it here, I could click and drag right down here. Or if I want to manipulate it, maybe I just click and drag up here to insert it. But I'd like to try and place it right here in the shaded area. So I'm going to click and drag from the top left corner of that sphere and down. And when I let go, you can see I've got just the image itself. I'm going to move it into position here nicely. Deselect by clicking off the page. And look at that, I've got my logo. And it's an Adobe Illustrator file, meaning it's a vector graphic file. I can click on the different parts of this and actually manipulate them here in CorelDRAW if I wanted to. All right, now let's try importing that TIFF file and look at the difference. If I go up to my import button, again to the Lesson 13 folder of the exercise files, I've got this one here, the GOLogo, which is a TIFF image. Remember, it's a bitmap. And we talked very early on in this title the differences between vector graphics and bitmap graphics, so I'm expecting to see some kind of rectangle here. When I click on my Geo logo and choose import, I get the same frame. I'm going to click and drag up here, a nice size logo, and let go. You can see it doesn't look like the quality is quite as nice, a little bit jagged. And watch what happens as I move it down here onto my actual gift certificate. I've got that white background. There's my rectangle. So in this case, the Adobe Illustrator file worked perfectly because I'm bringing a vector graphic into a vector graphic. Here I'm bringing in a bitmap and it doesn't look so hot. So with it still selected, I'll hit my delete key on the keyboard, and it looks like now I've got this nice looking project ready to save up and continue working with it using my Adobe Illustrator imported object. So hopefully now you've got a good understanding the difference between opening up another file format and importing it into your current file. In the next lesson, we'll talk about doing the exact opposite, and that is saving to other formats as well as exporting to those other formats.